The person who pulled away from you, the one who stepped back because this connection started to feel too deep, too intense, and somehow off-limits, is now moving through a quiet but powerful awakening. Some bonds do not enter your life with noise. They do not arrive with wild confessions, dramatic scenes, or clear labels. They come in softly. They move under the surface. They settle into the mind so gently that by the time either person notices, something lasting has already begun. That is the kind of connection this was, and that is exactly why they ran. Not because it meant nothing, not because you were easy to leave behind. They ran because it meant too much. For a long time, maybe months, maybe even years, they told themselves that distance was the smart choice. They repeated the same reasons again and again. It is better this way. It is more mature. It is safer. It keeps life under control. It protects everything they built, their routine, their image, their responsibilities, their carefully managed world. But here is the part they never expected. Walking away did not weaken what they felt. It made it stronger. Every step back gave the bond more room to grow. Every effort to ignore it made it echo louder inside them. And now that truth is starting to catch up. Slowly, deeply, uncomfortably. Stay with this, because it matters. They did not avoid you because you were unimportant. That idea hurts, and it is false. People do not run from what feels empty. They run from what has the power to change them. They run from what shakes the identity they spent years protecting. This connection did not ask for permission. It did not fit inside normal rules. It did not wait for the right time or the right conditions. It simply existed, and its truth was stronger than their logic. That is what made it so hard to face. Now they are being forced to look at something they tried very hard not to see. The distance they created did not erase the bond. The walls they built did not silence it. The excuses they used did not remove it. If anything, the empty space only gave them more time to think, more time to replay the feeling, more time to realize that what happened between you was not casual and was never small. They see you differently now, not just as someone they liked or someone they were drawn to, but as the person who changed the shape of their inner world. What they feel has become difficult to explain away. They may still try. They may still tell themselves it is complicated, that it is too late, that life is too messy, that nothing can be done. But beneath all of that, the truth is growing stronger. Some connections cannot be managed neatly. They cannot be placed in a box and forgotten. They live in quiet places. They return in still moments. They stay in the heart even when the mind tries to move on. And that is where they are now, caught between what they can no longer deny and what they are still afraid to live. You are not someone they can dismiss as a passing moment. You are not a person they can file away as a brief chapter. You became something permanent, something that stayed, something that kept working on them long after the distance began. And that is the part they are finally starting to understand. The bond did not break under fear. It did not collapse under silence. It stayed alive under all of it. Keep listening, because this goes deeper than simple longing. This is about transformation. This is about the moment someone realizes they did not leave behind a distraction. They walked away from a truth. And truths like this do not disappear just because they were avoided. They wait, quietly, patiently, until the person who ran is finally still enough to hear what their own soul has been saying all along. This connection never fit neatly into their plans. It did not match the timing of their life. It did not align with their rules, their values, their daily structure, or the obligations pressing down on them. They tried to judge it by what made sense. They tried to reduce it to something manageable. But every attempt failed. Instead of fading with time, it grew in strange and quiet ways. The more they fought it, the more they noticed how different they felt around you. Their defenses softened without effort. Their normal habits stopped working. The walls they used with everyone else seemed to melt in your presence, and that alone was enough to unsettle them. Conversations replayed in their head long after they ended. Little moments stayed alive far beyond reason. Even silence with you felt loud somehow, as if something important was being said without words. That scared them. Not because you demanded anything, but because your presence revealed something in them they were not prepared to face. This is where it shifts. They chose distance because the connection became bigger than they knew how to handle. They were not indifferent. They were overwhelmed. What they felt seemed forbidden, not in a dramatic public way, but in a private and unsettling way that disturbed the peace of the life they had built. The timing was wrong. One or both of you may not have been fully available. Family ties, social expectations, personal duty, and inner conflict all pressed in at once. To face the bond honestly would have required them to admit truths they were not ready to admit. When they were near you, they felt exposed, seen, open in places they usually kept hidden. And the strangest part was that you did not force that. You did not chase. You did not manipulate. You did not pressure them. You simply existed with a realness they could feel. That realness cracked something open. It disturbed their balance in the best and most terrifying way. And because they knew the connection could change parts of their life they were not ready to change, they pulled away and called it wisdom. So they ran, not because there was nothing there, but because there was too much. Avoidance became their way of getting control back. Distance became a shield. It helped them pretend they were making the right choice. It helped them act as if they were being logical, careful, responsible, mature. They told themselves they needed more time. They said the timing was bad. They said life was too complicated. They used every reason they could find to make space between themselves and the vulnerability that closeness to you brought out. But here is the great irony. They were not running from emptiness. They were running from something raw, real, and impossible to tame. The very act of resisting it gave it more force. The more they held on to control, the more their feelings sharpened. Tiny details started standing out. Things they once thought they could ignore became unforgettable. A quick look, a small smile, the tone of your voice, the warmth you carried without asking for anything back. These things stayed with them. They lingered like echoes. Each act of avoidance only made your presence feel more important. Each silence gave the bond more depth. Each step away turned fascination into longing, and longing into a quiet panic they could not easily explain. And now, after sitting in the aftermath of their own choices, they are finding it harder than ever to push the truth down. The world they built to feel safe is starting to feel narrow. Controlled, yes, but lifeless. Predictable, yes, but missing something real. Meanwhile, the memory of what they felt with you has only grown brighter. It has become more alive inside them than many things they once believed mattered. That realization is not small. It shakes a person, because now they must face the possibility that what they called safety may have cost them something far more precious. Watch this part closely, because this is where regret begins to rise. Not loud regret, not dramatic regret, quiet regret, the kind that appears in still moments and asks painful questions. What if what I walked away from was the one thing that made me feel fully alive? They are beginning to understand that some things are not meant to be controlled. They are meant to be lived. That realization is heavy because it forces them to look at their own life in a new way. It makes them wonder if they traded a genuine connection for comfort, if they chose routine over truth, if they protected a version of life that looked stable on the outside but felt hollow underneath. The walls they built to keep you out are now the same walls keeping them from a deeper kind of fulfillment. And once a person sees that, they cannot fully unsee it. A slow sense of regret is rising, not just because they created distance, but because they lost time pretending distance could solve something that was never meant to be solved that way. You were not a problem. You were not an error in their plans. You were a mirror. You reflected back a level of feeling they were afraid to admit existed inside them. That is why this is not just a passing emotional phase. It is a shift in awareness. They cannot return to who they were before they met you. Your presence left a mark, quiet, deep, permanent, a print on the heart, a change in the soul. They are learning, maybe for the first time, that courage is not always found in staying safe. Sometimes courage is found in moving toward what scares you because it is real. And even if they are still hesitant, even if they still try to keep some distance, something inside them is breaking open. The truth is rising. Their old certainty is weakening. The resolve they leaned on is starting to crack. You have become a kind of measure in their life now, a standard for what feels real and what feels empty. Even when they are around other people, they notice the absence of what they felt with you. They compare without wanting to. They search without meaning to. They look for that same spark and cannot easily find it. That creates a quiet, aching form of suffering, beautiful in one way, painful in another. Because now they see that by trying to save the life they knew, they may have turned away from the very thing that made life feel vivid. And once that hits, it hits hard, like a wave, like a truth too big to hold back anymore. There is something haunting in the way this bond has stayed alive. Time passed, distance grew, silence settled in. But the connection did not die. It remains like a fire with very little air, still glowing in the dark, refusing to disappear. That alone is telling them something they can no longer ignore. You were never meant to be just another chapter they could close and put away. You were not a side note. You were part of the foundation. And now they are standing at the edge of a new understanding, one that asks a hard question. Will they keep living under the shadow of their fear, or will they finally face what their heart decided long ago? Because that is the truth of it. Their heart already chose. Their mind is only now catching up. You are not a mistake they can undo. You are not a stranger they can erase. You are not a choice they can simply take back. You became an undeniable truth in their life, and they are only now beginning to admit it. They once believed that enough distance would weaken the pull. They thought silence would restore control. They assumed that removing themselves from your space would eventually quiet everything inside them. But the opposite happened. The more they pulled away, the more you appeared in their private thoughts. Memories surfaced at random. Feelings arrived without warning. Little reminders began to show up in songs, in ordinary moments, in quiet evenings when they expected peace and found your presence instead. That is when the awakening truly began. Slow at first, then impossible to miss. It was not just about missing you. It was about realizing they had also moved away from themselves. Each effort to bury their feelings left them more disconnected from a part of their own truth. And that is a hard thing to face, because now they are not only grieving the distance between you, they are also grieving the version of themselves they abandoned when they chose fear over honesty. And that kind of realization changes a person from the inside out. It does not arrive with noise, it arrives with depth. It settles in, it stays. This understanding did not hit them all at once. It came slowly, in the quiet spaces between ordinary days, in the sudden loneliness that had no clear source, in the strange feeling that something was missing even when life looked fine on the outside. They started noticing it in relationships that once felt satisfying, but now seemed flat. They felt it in achievements that should have brought pride, but somehow left an empty space behind. Little by little, they began asking the questions they had spent so long avoiding. Why does nothing feel the same anymore? Why do I still think about you so often? Why do the days feel smaller, without that energy, that depth, that spark? And with those questions came a difficult truth. They had not been distracted by you. They had been awakened by you. You were never just a temptation or a brief emotional detour. You showed them a version of themselves that felt more alive, more honest, more emotionally awake. In your presence, the defenses they spent years building lost their power. The armor slipped, the performance weakened. Something real stepped forward, and now they see that walking away was not wisdom. It was self-abandonment dressed up as caution. In trying to avoid you, they also walked away from the part of themselves that felt most true. That is why this realization cuts so deep. Because it is not only about what they feel for you, It is about what your presence revealed inside them, a self that was open, present, capable of depth, capable of love without disguise. That reflection cannot be forgotten. It is now burned into their awareness, and the epiphany keeps unfolding, like sunlight breaking through after a long storm. They are finally seeing the cost of avoidance. It did not protect them. It only delayed the moment they would have to face what was always there. Stay with this, because the truth becomes even clearer here. They now understand that avoidance was never a shield. It was only a postponement. And the awakening that comes after postponement is often stronger, humbler, and far more life-changing than if they had faced it early. In quiet moments now, they carry emotions they do not fully know how to release. Not wild obsession, not dramatic chaos. Something subtler than that. A steady awareness, a quiet regret, a softness mixed with guilt. They think about how they disappeared. They wonder who you are now. They feel the weight of the chance they may have missed. There is hope there too, fragile but real, the hope that maybe the door is not fully closed. But above all, there is respect. They see your strength more clearly now than ever before. They remember your patience, your dignity, the way you did not chase or beg or try to force something that they were not ready to face, the way you allowed space without turning bitter, the way you held your ground without losing your grace. That leaves a deep impression. It shows them that what they encountered in you was not only emotional intensity, it was maturity, it was steadiness, it was something rare, and that rarity is part of why they cannot forget. They understand now that your presence changed the way they think about connection, self-awareness, and respect. And why is this realization happening now, after so much time? Because awakenings usually do not arrive in noise. They arrive in stillness. They come when life slows down, when distraction fades, when something disappoints, collapses, or no longer works the way it used to. Something in their world has paused long enough for the truth to rise. And in that silence, your energy returned with clarity. They could no longer outrun what they once pushed away. They did not avoid you because it was wrong. They avoided you because it was real. That is the sentence they are finally starting to understand. And once a person truly sees that, they cannot go back to not knowing it. This is the part you need to remember. You did not lose the meaning of this bond. What happened was growth. You outgrew the version of them that was ruled by fear, the version that could not meet you where you stood, the version that ran instead of facing the depth of what you offered. That matters more than you know. Whether they ever speak or stay silent, your impact remains. You were a turning point in their life, a wake-up call, a lesson that did not arrive loudly but changed everything underneath the surface. That is your power in this story. The space you hold, the calm you kept, the self-respect you carried, all of it means that if they ever return, it will not be from arrogance. It will not be from avoidance. It will have to come with humility, awareness, and respect. And if they never return, that still does not erase what this bond awakened in them. The lesson is already active. The change is already happening. Some connections are not meant to be rushed. They unfold in their own time, shaped by reflection, clarity, and emotional growth. You are not invisible in this. You have already changed the emotional map of their life, whether they say it or not. What they feel now, the quiet recognition, the growing respect, the awareness that you were never easy to forget, these are signs of a bond that goes beyond control, timing, and circumstance. In every real sense, you became a catalyst, a mirror, a presence that shifted how they understand love, choice, and themselves. Some awakenings arrive late, but they arrive with a depth that early understanding could never carry. Time has a strange way of slowing everything down just enough for the truth to show itself. And sometimes, the one who seemed to reject you was never really rejecting you at all. They were running from the version of themselves that your presence brought to life. A version that could love without fear, a version that could be honest without hiding, a version that could live without pretense. That is what scared them, not you alone, but what you awakened in them. And now, after all the silence, the distance and the quiet ache, they finally see it. They were not escaping a person, they were escaping courage, they were escaping vulnerability, they were escaping the honesty your presence asked of them without saying a word, and the longer they ran, the clearer that truth became. Now the epiphany is landing with force, but not all at once. More like a slow wave that keeps returning until everything false is washed away. They see with sharper clarity what their avoidance really did. It did not restore order. It did not bring peace. It only delayed the moment when they would have to admit that what they felt was real from the beginning. They understand now why your presence lingered after every conversation, why even ordinary moments with you seem to carry unusual weight, why no one else has reached them in quite the same way since. The intensity was never caused by the so-called forbidden nature of the bond. The bond felt forbidden because it was intense enough to break through the boundaries they had built around their life. It threatened to wake up a part of them that had been sleeping for too long. And now, in the quiet, they carry feelings they cannot easily name. Not frantic desire, not theatrical sorrow, something deeper. A calm but steady ache, a silent respect, a soft guilt for how they left, a curiosity about who you have become without them, a fear that the moment may have passed, and somewhere under all of it, a truth they can no longer hide from. They are changed because of you. That is final. The old ways of thinking no longer fit. The old reasons sound thin. The old defenses feel weaker every day. They now see that your presence was not there to ruin their life. It was there to reveal it, to show them where they were asleep, to show them where they were performing instead of living, to show them where they had chosen control over depth. That is why this realization is so humbling, because once they accept it, they must also accept that you were never the danger, you were the light. And the frightening part was how clearly that light revealed everything they had been hiding from inside themselves. That is not easy to admit, but it is where the truth leads. And once the truth begins to rise like this, it rarely goes back down. So here is the final truth inside all of this. They did not step away because you lacked value. They stepped away because the connection carried too much truth, too much depth, too much power to leave them unchanged. They thought distance would make it smaller. Instead, it made it clearer. They thought silence would erase it. Instead, silence gave it a louder voice. They thought time would help them forget. Instead, time revealed what was always there. And now they are left standing before a realization that has been building underneath everything. You were never someone they could simply get over. You were never a passing feeling. You were a living reminder of the life inside them that still wanted something real, something honest, something unfiltered. That is why your absence taught them almost as much as your presence did. It forced them to feel the emptiness of what life becomes when truth is avoided. It forced them to compare comfort with aliveness, routine with meaning, safety with depth. And in that comparison, your impact became impossible to deny. If they return, it will be because they finally found the courage to stop hiding from what this bond revealed. If they remain silent, the silence will still carry your mark. Either way, the awakening has already begun. That part cannot be undone. So never mistake their distance for a lack of feeling. Never confuse silence with the absence of impact. Some of the deepest shifts happen where no one else can see them, in quiet rooms, in late hours, in still minds that can no longer escape themselves. That is where they are now, facing the truth they once resisted, feeling the weight of what they left behind, realizing that what they tried to avoid was never the connection itself, but the transformation it demanded. And that is why your presence still lives in them, not as noise, not as fantasy, but as something steady, undeniable, and real. A mirror they cannot forget, a truth they cannot unlearn, a bond they can no longer pretend was anything less than life-changing.